I sat at the table, rubbing my ankle, and watched Shayna dance. I swear this woman was conceived on the dance floor and was born to spend her entire life on it. I didn't look around to be sure, but I was willing to bet that most eyes in that place were focused on her and her partner. Not that he had anything to do with it. Compared to Shayna, every man she danced with looked like Fred Astaire or Gene Kelly, even if they had 2 left feet. Normally, I would be the one to dance with her, but I sprained my ankle at work and was unable to even walk, let alone dance, but I promised her we would spend the evening together. Even when I was in the best shape, I couldn't keep up with her on the dance floor, so I got used to her dancing with others. Most of the people there were regulars, and they knew what it was all about. As soon as I sat down after dancing with Shayna and didn't get up during the next set, they realized they could come over and ask her to dance. Shayna asked me if I minded, and of course I never said no. Over the course of the evening, I would dance about 2/3 of the dances, and the others would get the remaining third. I didn't really mind because I enjoyed watching her move as much as I enjoyed being around her. Watching her movements to the music, I remembered how we met. It was at a school dance. She was there with a guy from the football team, and he had no rhythm at all. He might move fine on the football field, but on the dance floor, he might as well be a tree stump. Shayna was starting to get angry with him, and it showed. I watched her, and even with a stump, she looked good. As I watched her, I thought what a pity it was that she didn't have a partner who could do her justice. I came to the bachelor dance not because I couldn't find a date, but because I had to work that evening, so I didn't plan to attend. Then the girl quit, and the boss had to change the work schedule, and I ended up having the day off. It was too late to make a date, and knowing that some of the girls were going to the bachelor party with a dance, I decided to go. There were about a dozen girls who came alone, so I was able to find plenty of dance partners. I liked to dance, and thanks to my mother, who forced me to take dance lessons, I wasn't too bad. Not like Shayna, but who was it then? I knew who Shayna was, but I didn't know her personally. She transferred here from out of state at the beginning of 10th grade, but there were 242 kids in our class, and you couldn't know them all. Let us add to this that we did not move in the same circles. She ran with the jocks and the so-called crowd of insiders, and I came to school, served the allotted time, and immediately after class went to work part-time. Anyway, back to Shayna and the stump. Everyone present could see that she was upset, and everyone heard her say that she must have been out of her mind to come to the dance with Jimmy. Keep in mind, I'm not saying anything bad about Jimmy, I'm just saying that he didn't dance well enough to satisfy Shayna. I was talking to a couple of guys when the band started playing tango. Someone pulled my sleeve, and I turned around and saw Shayna. "Frank, right?" I nodded affirmatively, and she asked, "Can you dance tango, Frank?" I said I could, and she took me by the hand and led me to the dance floor. She didn't ask me to dance with her, she just took my hand and pulled me along. I won't say it was a magical moment, but we moved well together. When the song ended, I walked her back to the table where she was sitting, thanked her for dancing, and returned to the guys I was talking to. 5 minutes later, Phil Reed said, "And here is your new girlfriend." I turned around and Shayna came up to me. "Do you have a minute?" she asked me. "Certainly." "Can I talk to you alone?" "I guess," I said, and she took me a little away from the group I was talking to. "I have a problem. More precisely, 2 problems. Jimmy didn't know how to tango and was obviously angry when I asked you to be my partner. Bev Holbrook said he grumbled for a couple of seconds and then suddenly said, 'Fuck her, bitch. She can walk home,' and walked away. I need a dance partner for the rest of the evening and need a ride home. Would you like to be a dance partner? I can do both. If you don't mind being seen in this pathetic wreck, I call a car. Unless it leaks when it rains. Not yet, but I don't make any promises for the future." I spent the rest of the evening as Shayna's dance partner, and when it was over, I took her home. When I walked her to the door, she said, "I had fun. What do you say we do this again sometime?" "I wish I could." "Call me." "Fine. It can take some time. Depends on my work schedule." "It's okay. Just don't forget to call sometime." This is how my relationship with Shayna began. Our dates were a little sporadic because I didn't have a regular work schedule. The situation changed from week to week, so Shayna and I never reached the stage of a permanent boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, and due to my irregular schedule, she could not count on me for her usual Friday and Saturday dates. Her parents didn't allow her to date during the week, and since I could count on a midweek weekend 3 times out of every 4 weeks, she dated other guys on the weekends. I would love to be her permanent boyfriend, but the only way to do that was to quit my job, and I couldn't do that. My parents let me buy a car when I was 16, and they paid half, but I had to take care of license plates, insurance, gas, and upkeep myself, which meant I had a job. I was able to negotiate with my boss for me to have the day of prom off, and I was able to ask Shayna to come with me ahead of time, and she agreed. The day of the prom, in my opinion, was simply magical. Shayna and I danced all the dances together, and one day we were the only couple on the dance floor when the band played samba. After prom was over, we went to a couple of after-prom parties, and at one of them at Tim Shane's house, she said, "I have a surprise for you, baby." Surprise? What? On my 17th birthday, I promised myself that I would lose my virginity on my 18th birthday or my graduation party, whichever came first. I turned 18 last Saturday, but the guy I was dating was nothing special, and I knew I'd be at the prom with you, so you get the prize. That is, you will get it if you want it. What do you say? My mom and dad didn't raise stupid kids, so you know what I said to that, and I quickly found a motel. I didn't know Shane, but I also started that night as a virgin. I had no experience, but I had watched at least a dozen adult films, so I knew what to do. I also read a lot of the Penthouse articles, so I thought I had a good idea of what a woman would want. I was determined to make Shayna think I was special, so once we were naked and done with all the kissing and shaking hands, I surprised her and went down on her. Shay said she was a virgin, and I had no reason to doubt her, but I was a virgin too, and that didn't necessarily mean I was completely inexperienced. I had girls whom I caressed their breasts and their sweet spot, and they were able to satisfy me with their caresses, so it is quite possible that Shayna ate her cookies somewhere. I hoped she didn't because she would know I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't want that. I wanted her to think that I was the man, and I think I succeeded. Because when it was all over, she said, "God," she said, "I had no idea. I want to do this again. Can we do this again?" We could and did. After the prom, everything returned to normal. I had maybe 1 day off in 3, and Shayna always went out with me on Fridays and Saturdays. I would come even if she had to interrupt a date with someone else to do so, and we always ended the date making love. I talked to Shayna about being permanent and exclusive, but she said no. She did it softly, but it was still a no. "I'd love to, baby." True, I'd love to, but I can't just sit at home on Fridays and Saturdays just because you have to work. I could do this if you only had to work weekends occasionally, but you usually end up working most of them. I was in love with Shayna, but I wasn't stupid. On Fridays and Saturdays, Shayna went on dates that I couldn't go on, and since she was drawn to sex like a duckling to water, I decided that her other dates were lucky too. I didn't know that for sure. I suspected this, and it drove me crazy, but I couldn't do anything about it. Graduation has arrived, and with it, changes. Shayna went to college, but higher education was not part of my plans. My father got me into a tool and die training program where he worked, which meant I could quit my part-time job. Now I had the weekend, but Shayna was gone. College was pretty close, only 50 kilometers, but I figured Shayna would meet a lot of new guys, and some idiot from college would be attracted to her. So imagine my surprise when I got home from work on Friday after my first week of college. Internship program, and my mom told me that Shayna had gotten into college. She called and asked me to call her back. "What time will you pick me up this evening?" "What? You don't work on weekends anymore, and Carol Moser is having a party." "What time will you pick me up?" I picked her up at 7, and from then on we were inseparable. I proposed to her, and she accepted, but we agreed to wait until she finished school before getting married. In her second to last year, we got into trouble when she wanted to go to Florida with her friends for spring break, and I didn't want her to go. We quarreled, and I heard the phrase, "I don't belong to you," addressed to me, and she went to Fort Lauderdale. Lauderdale. This made me angry, so when she returned, I avoided her and did not answer her calls. We spent 3 months apart before she settled down on my porch and didn't move until I promised to sit down and talk to her. We got married 6 months after Shayna graduated and just celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary. The music stopped, the musicians called a break, and Shayna's dance partner brought her to the table and thanked her for dancing. We sipped our drinks and chatted with the people we were sitting with until the group returned. As their next set began, a guy came up to our table and asked if he could dance with Shayna. I took one look at this guy and immediately knew that I didn't like him. Just looking at him gave me a bad feeling. I looked at Shayna and saw that she wanted to dance, so I did what I always did and said I don't mind if my wife does it. The guy was good, you have to give him credit. She and Shayna seemed to glide across the floor with a fluid grace that I might have admired if I hadn't felt such an instant dislike for the guy. The tune ended, and Shayna and her partner remained on the dance floor and waited for the next number, and when it began, they embraced each other and began to move to the music. I watched for a while and then got up and went to the toilet, and on the way back, I stopped to talk to a guy I went to school with and hadn't seen for a long time. When I returned to the table, Shayna wasn't there, and I noticed her purse was missing, so I assumed she was in the ladies' room. When she didn't return after 15 minutes, I looked around for her, but didn't see her anywhere. After another 5 minutes, I went into the women's restroom and found that she was not there. I was standing in the hallway leading to the restrooms, looking at the dance floor, when a pretty blonde came up to me and said, "You won't find her here." "What? Your wife, girlfriend, or whoever it is. You won't find it here." I looked at her and asked, "What do you mean?" She left with the idiot who brought me. "What are you talking about?" "They left the dance floor, walked over to your table, she took her purse, and then they got into his car and drove away." "This is a joke, right?" "I'm afraid not. We were abandoned. I spent another half-hour searching for Shayna, but there was no sign of her. A couple of times I called her cell phone, but it went to voicemail. In the end, I had to accept what the blonde told me. I went in search of her, and when I found her, asked her to tell me where her boyfriend lived. I have no idea. This was only my second date with him, and all I know is that he's a freelance carpenter, loves Mexican food, drives a late model Chevrolet pickup, and lives in an apartment on the east side of town. I know he lives in an apartment because he always complains about the noise there. What are you going to do? I think all I can do is go home and wait to see what happens next. Would it be too much trouble for you to give me a ride? I don't have money for a taxi with me, and I don't know anyone here. Grab your things and let's go. On the way home, she asked, "Does she do this often?" This is the first time she has done something like this. "How long have you been together?" "Last week it was 5 years since we got married, and before that we were together for a couple of years." She was silent the rest of the way to her house, and when we got there, she said, "I should invite you in and then sleep with you so that if I ever see him again, I can tell him how good you are and thank him for giving me the opportunity to meet you. The only problem is that if I did, I'd hate myself in the morning. Everything is fine. You look beautiful, and it would be hard for me to refuse if you invited me in, but I would say no. I've never cheated on Shayna, and even though things aren't looking too good right now, I still need to figure out what's going on before I give up on the marriage and start looking for company. If you start looking, you know where I live." "That's right, but I don't know your name or phone number." "It's true that you don't know. How stupid of me. I should have introduced myself when I asked you to give me a ride." She rummaged in her purse, pulled out a business card, and handed it to me. It was written on it, "Tanya Ensign, real estate broker." And there were 5 telephone numbers, a fax number, and an internet address. "Use your cell phone number. This is the fastest way to get to me. Nice to meet you, Tanya Ensign." I extended my hand to her and introduced myself. Nice to meet you, Josh Daniels. Thanks for the ride, and good luck to you. When I got home, Shayna wasn't there, and there were no messages on the answering machine. I called her cell phone again, but it went to voicemail again. I didn't bother leaving a message. I turned on the TV and watched all sorts of nonsense until 2 in the morning, and then went to bed. When I got up in the morning, Shayna wasn't home, and when she didn't show up by noon, I called her mother and sister, but neither of them had heard anything from her. Naturally, they wanted to know why I was looking for her, so I told them what little I knew, and her mother told me to call the police. I wasn't ready for this yet. I unsuccessfully called a couple of her friends, and after a dozen calls to her cell phone, I gave up on the idea. At 6 o'clock in the evening, I finally called the police, but was told that a person had to disappear for 48 hours before they would accept a missing persons report. Meanwhile, I became more and more angry about the situation, and by the time I woke up on Sunday morning, I was already fed up. I called a locksmith, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I had changed all the locks in the house. By 6 o'clock in the evening, all of Shayna's things were packed into boxes and bags and stood in the garage. I didn't change the code on the garage door lock so she could come in and get her stuff if she ever came home. I had a pretty good relationship with my neighbors, and I talked to a few of them and told them that my wife had run off with the truck driver, that I expected her to come home while I was at work and clean up the house. I asked them to write down the license plate number if anyone brought Shayna to the house. On Monday, I got up and went to work, and during my lunch break, I went to the police station and filed a missing person report. The detective who handled this was frank with me. There's not much we can do. She left this place on her own, voluntarily got into the guy's car, and drove away with him. We'll keep an eye on the hospitals in case she shows up, but we're not going to waste our energy on it. I told him that I understood everything, left the station, and returned to work. At 2 o'clock, I got a call from Alan, the guy who lived next to me on the south side. About 5 minutes ago, a red Chevrolet pickup pulled up in your driveway. Your wife got out and tried to go into the house, but couldn't, and then got back into the truck, and they drove off. I remembered the car number. He gave it to me, and I wrote it down. I called a friend who I knew could get information from the traffic police, and at 4 he called me back with the name and address of the owner of the Chevrolet. At 4:10 they called me again. It was Shayna. No hello, just said. I came home and couldn't get in. No wonder, because I changed all the locks. Can I go home? Of course not, if you understand that they won't let you into the house. All your things are in the garage. The old code still works, so you can go in and get them. Anything left there the next day will be thrown out on the side of the road along with the rest of the trash. I need to talk to you, honey. Don't call me sweetheart, Shayna. You gave up this right. What about conversations? You said it all with what you did on Friday night. Please, Josh, I need to get back to work, Shayna. Goodbye. But it's never that simple. When I got home that evening, Shayna was sitting on the porch steps waiting for me. I don't know how long she was there, but if she showed up at the time I usually get home from work, she was there for almost 4 hours. After finishing work, I went and checked the address they gave me for the owner of the Chevrolet. As Tanya said, it was an apartment in the eastern part of the city. There was no Chevrolet truck in the lot, so I parked so I could see the door to apartment 2A and prepared to wait. I was there for a little over an hour and 40 minutes before a red Chevrolet Silverado pulled up and parked at the house. When the driver got out, I saw that it was the same idiot who asked Shayna to dance on Friday night. I sat there for another hour and watched, and then the door to apartment 2A opened, and an idiot wearing a leather jacket came out. He walked over to the maintenance building and removed the tarp from the Harley Softal. He started the engine and drove off into the night. At that point, I had seen everything I needed, so I went home and found Shayna waiting for me. Where have you been? I waited here for several hours. Since I have no one else to rush home to, I ran away from work to run some errands. What the fuck do you want? I want to sit down and talk to you. What to talk about, Shayna? About how I was stupid and screwed up. We can go into the house and get comfortable, and then I can talk calmly. I can hear you perfectly well here, too. I don't want my neighbors to know about my affairs. The neighbors already know. I talked to all of them, told them that you ran away and will probably come back and try to break into the house, and ask them to call the police if they see this happening. So just go ahead and say what you want to say. Please, Josh. I don't want the whole world to know about this. Let me tell you at home. I wanted to argue with her, but unfortunately I liked this stupid bitch, so I gave in and let her come into the house. She sat down at the kitchen table, and I took 2 beers from the refrigerator and sat down next to her. I slid one of the beers across the table towards her, and then sat back and waited. She took a sip of Bud and then said, "It won't be easy, and to explain it, I need to go back to the past. It all started when we had a big fight when I went to Florida for spring break. I was furious, and on the first night there, at a party, I met a guy. He pestered me, and my thinking was, I'll show Josh. I don't belong to him. I belong to myself and will do what I like. I ended up in bed with Dan. I can't sugarcoat this, Josh. It was by far the best sex I've ever had in my life. I had seemingly continuous climaxes that left me as limp as a wet washcloth. This is not a test of your abilities, Josh. You are an amazing lover. Dan was not a great lover. In fact, he was a little rough around the edges, but what Dan brought to the party was a 25 cm manhood, and it touched places in me that I didn't even know existed. I spent the entire vacation with him, and when the vacation was over, he wanted me to stay with him in Florida, but I would never agree to this. He was a dumbass, and all he had was a big man's dignity. Every now and then I think about Dan and how I felt when I slept with him. It's a pleasant memory, but Dan was no longer in my life, and pleasant memories were all I had and all I would ever have, and I knew it. Until Friday evening. When I was dancing with Craig, he rubbed himself against me a couple of times. This is nothing new. This happens all the time when I dance with guys, and it never bothered me, but with Craig it was different. He seemed huge to me. I pulled away from him and looked at him in surprise, and he smiled at me and said, "Yes, honey, it's real." I said, "No way," and he replied, "Do you want to watch?" I was drunk and in a pretty good mood. You know how I get when I dance with a really good partner, and I said, "Of course." We danced in the corner, standing with our backs to the dance floor. I was blocking the view from the other side, and he showed it to me. It was the same as Dan's, but a little thicker. It was as if I had been transported back in time. I watched and remembered a week of almost continuous climaxes. He said, "You want it, and he wants you. Let's get out of here." Honestly, I must have been in a trance when he walked me to his truck. I didn't think about anything other than how I would feel when I ended up in bed with him. To be honest, I never thought about you or the fact that I am a married woman until Saturday morning. I woke up, saw Craig sleeping next to me, and only then thought, "Oh my God, what have I done?" I panicked, jumped out of bed, and started looking for my clothes. Craig woke up, grabbed me, and pulled me back onto the bed, and then I forgot about everything except the upcoming pleasures. By the time we finished on Saturday, I was afraid to go home or even call you. On Sunday, everything was approximately also, but I can honestly say that on Sunday, I really didn't want to be there. I wanted to be with you. I wanted to be loved, not just owned. Josh, all I was to him was the scent of the weekend, and all he was to me was a giver of pleasure and nothing more. From Sunday afternoon until today, I gathered my courage to return home, and when I got here, I could not enter. You will never know what it cost me to be here on the steps, waiting for you to return home. Dozens of times I wanted to jump up and run away. How I had the courage to come here, stay here, and wait it out, you will never know. I looked at her for a few moments and then asked, "So why are you here, Shina? You plucked up the courage to come here, but why?" "Because I want to go home." You ran off with some big asshole, disappeared for 3 days, and then you expect me to take you back. I hope. I was stupid, and I screwed up, and I know it, but I love you, Josh, and I need to be with you. I hope that you will find it in your heart to forgive me and allow me to return home. How long? Until that idiot Craig calls you and asks if you're ready for another fun weekend. Until the next plus-size guy fucks you on the dance floor. Can you give me a good reason why I should invite you back? Just one good reason, Shayna. I love you and I know that you love me. At least that was the case until last Friday evening. We've had a wonderful 5 years together, and I promise the next 25 will be just as wonderful if you give me the chance. Until the next big asshole comes along, right? Never again, Josh. I swear to you, never again. I don't know what came over me this time. I can't explain it, but never again. I don't know, Shayna. You're asking a lot of me, and I'm not sure I can handle it. Basically, you're asking me to forget about what happened last weekend so that I can trust you and let life go on as if nothing happened. I'm not even sure I can trust you again. I'm not sure I can think every day about whether the day will come when you decide you need a plus size again. I swear to God, Josh, never ever. It was a huge mistake. I regret this and promise it will never happen again. I looked at her, and she looked so miserable that I wanted to hug her and comfort her, but of course I didn't. After a few seconds of silence, I said, I have to think about it, Shayna. Like I said, I'm not sure I can handle someone I can't trust. For now, you can take the spare bedroom, but perhaps it will be useful for you to stay out of my sight for a while. You won't regret it, Josh. I promise you that you won't regret it. I pushed what was happening with Shayna into the background and turned my attention to Mr. Craig Mercer. He was going to pay for what he did, but I had to do it in a way that would cause maximum damage while avoiding jail. This meant that I probably wouldn't get the pleasure of seeing his face when he realized exactly who had set him up. I would have loved to have smashed Mercer into a pile of crap, but it wasn't meant to be. My buddy Joel did 5 years for disorderly assault because he punished a guy he caught having sex with his wife. No, the best I could do was beat Mercer up with an unknown assailant, and then suggest to him that what happened to him is what happens to guys who mess with someone else's woman. I took advantage of my leave and followed Mercer. He didn't seem to have a regular job. He worked as a carpenter, but never stayed in the same place for more than a couple of days. What was constant was that every evening, when he returned home, he unsheathed his Harley and went for a ride. As for family, I decided to give Shayna a chance. It may not be the wisest thing to do, but it is a truism that not only is love blind, but it also makes you stupid and allows you to do things you wouldn't normally even think about. She made me promises, but after letting her come back, I didn't take them at face value. I think Ronald Reagan said, trust, but verify. I had a friend who was into electronics, and he told me how to install a home bug on my phone. It wasn't difficult, and I got most of what I needed for work at Walmart. This was a purely symbolic offer, since she could still talk to Mercer while at work or on her cell phone. She had problems with her job because they didn't approve of personal calls during work hours, so she probably wouldn't give him her number. I had no way of knowing if she gave him her cell number, but I could check our cell phone provider's monthly statements. Every evening, returning from work, I went down to the basement and checked if the recorder had recorded anything interesting. Shayna returned home a week ago when the first call rang. Hello? Hello, sweet cheeks. Did you miss me? What do you want, Craig? Same as you, sweet cheeks. Passionate sex on the weekend. Sorry, Craig, but I'm not interested. Of course, it's interesting, sweet cheeks. You just haven't gotten rid of the guilt yet, but you will soon. I'll call you again in a couple of days. Think of me, sweet cheeks. Think that I am ready to receive you. Don't bother me, Craig. I'm really not interested. Let's see. We'll talk later, sweet cheeks. When I went out to dinner, I casually asked Shayna how her day was. Pretty good until I got home from work. What happened then? Craig called. And what? He wants to get back together. You're going to. Damn it, Josh. I told you I would never date again, and I mean it. Okay, don't be offended. Don't forget who's in charge of the party in this mess. I have the right to ask. We spent the rest of dinner in silence, and before bed she tried to follow me into the bedroom, but I simply pointed her to a spare room, and she took the hint. His next call came 2 days later. How are you, sweet cheeks, ready for hot sex? I asked you not to bother me anymore. I know, but that's not what you meant. I signed you up for the weekend, to you or to me. That won't happen, Craig. The first time was a serious mistake, for which I will have to pay for a long time. This won't happen again. Don't call me again. And she hung up. At dinner that night, she didn't mention the call. That evening, she tried to follow me into the bedroom again, and this time I let her. She did everything she could to destroy me. I'll make you forget, baby. I will make you forget, and I will make you forget for the rest of your life. I took another precaution and placed a voice-activated cassette recorder under the seat of her car. When I checked on him the day after Mercer's second call, I heard her talking. Hello? Oh, hi. I miss you too. Of course not. He will suspect something for a long time. Yes, if he tapes the phone, then everything he hears is what we want him to hear. I even told him that you called. What do you mean, how did he take it? He was suspicious. He asked me if I was going to see you again, and I denied it quite loudly. No, baby, not anytime soon. First, I have to convince him that I'm going to be a good little girl. I want it too, baby. I think about it all the time. No, Craig. Don't be stupid, Craig. I won't leave him for you. Yes, baby, I know. I remember every one of them and wish there were more, a lot more, but I love Josh and I don't love you. So what if I'm the best ass you've ever had and you're giving me the best sex of your life? I do not love you. I love him and will never leave him. Be patient, baby. It would take me a while to get to a place where I could free myself without him wondering where I was. It may take a couple of months, but we can do it again. No. Keep pretending to call home in case he's listening. The more I tell you to stop bothering me, the faster he will start to trust me. Fine. Bye, baby. It's not that I didn't expect it. I mean, something made me tap the home phone and install a voice recorder in her car. It's time to bring down the planned compensation on Craig Mercer's head. It's nice to have good friends. I told Billy Newbert about my problem and what I wanted to do. I asked if he had any suggestions, and he made them. At 7:05 p.m., Mercer pulled into the apartment complex parking lot, and at 8:10 p.m. he left the apartment, unlocked the Harley, and rode it out of the parking lot. I followed him at a sufficient distance so that he would not suspect anything. As we drove, I kept a close eye on the view behind me and the road ahead for oncoming traffic. It took about 10 minutes before the situation improved. There was no oncoming traffic either behind me or in front. I stepped on the gas, pulled out to pass Mercer, and as I came alongside him, I turned the steering wheel sharply to the right at 80 kilometers per hour and crashed into him. He and Harley drove off the road. I drove past him and left. I drove Billy's car to the Safeway parking lot, where Stan North picked me up and drove me back to work. Billy unfastened the steering column of his car and then drove it to John Marshall's house, where he sat and played poker with 6 friends until 2 hours had passed after Mercer's accident. When he got ready to leave, he went outside and discovered that his car had been stolen and called the police. My alibi was that I was working. No, there was no one else there to confirm it, but the security guard at the front desk checked me out about an hour after Mercer ran off the road. As far as he knew, I had been there before. He had no way of knowing that I left the building through the loading dock, where Stan met me and took me to pick up Billy's car. Mercer would not have been able to recognize me even if he had looked back when I approached him from the side, since I was wearing a ski mask. It didn't matter anyway because the cops never came to see me. Insurance covered the damage to Billy's car, and I reimbursed him for the deductible amount. Besides, I can do him a huge favor if he ever needs it. The next morning, I read the newspaper and drank coffee while Shayna prepared breakfast. Darling, yes. What was the name of the guy you snuck off with that night? Damn it, Josh. I thought we agreed not to mention it again. I know, but the paper here says Craig Mercer was the victim of a hit and run last night, and he's in the hospital in the intensive care unit. I never told you his name. You shouldn't have done that. When he brought you to the house, one of the neighbors wrote down his number. and I asked a guy I know to check it to find out the name and address of this idiot. Josh, you wouldn't do that. What didn't you do? Hurt him? Why Shayna? Do you have feelings for this asshole? Are you saying that my revenge will upset you? No, of course not. I just don't want you to get in trouble. I screwed up and I'm sorry, but I don't want you to seek revenge or try to get even in any way. I'll die if you get in trouble because of my stupidity. I didn't say another word on this topic, but the idea was planted. It wouldn't hurt me at all if she thought I could do something like that. 2 days after the accident, I called to see if Mercer could have visitors. They told me it was possible, and I came during visiting hours. I entered his room and saw that he had a cast all over his body. I walked up to the bed, looked at him, and said, "Damn it, you must have really pissed someone off." He was a little out of it, probably from the painkillers, but he managed to squeeze out, "Who are you? You will not recognize me? Are you saying that you can ask a man if you can dance with his wife, go away with her for the weekend, and not even remember his face? You did this to me. You bastard. I'll get you for this. Sorry, idiot, but this is not my merit. If you ever find out who did this, you can thank him. I plan to get back to you this weekend. 3 of my friends were going to hold you while I castrated you. Whoever did this kept your family jewels. At least for now, but you can expect to see me and 3 of my friends when you get out of here and back on your feet. Yes, indeed, Craig, old man. You'll see me again, and you won't like it. You won't like this at all. See you." I left him with these thoughts and went home. Over dinner, I told Shayna that I had stopped by the hospital to see Mercer. I told him to hurry up and get better so I could try to help him. I told him that he should thank whoever did this to him for keeping his family jewels, at least for a while. I've got everything ready to castrate the bastard this weekend, but now it'll have to wait until he's out of the hospital and regaining his strength. Are you crazy? You'll be thrown in jail. No, they won't. Me and the guys who will hold him while I castrate him will be wearing ski masks so that he doesn't know who we are. I have 6 guys who would swear I was playing poker when this happened. He will understand that it was me, but he will not be able to prove anything. Don't do this, Josh. You'll only get yourself into trouble. I'm starting to think you have some feelings for this guy. No, I just don't want you to go to jail. You expect me to just accept what that asshole did to me? Am I supposed to be some kind of wimp? This asshole thinks I'm a weakling. Otherwise, he would never have called here after you got home to try to get you to come see him again. I have to do this for my own peace of mind, Shane. Whether you like it or not, you know that my trust in you is not complete. I don't think you'd go looking for a guy with a huge manhood, but I wouldn't rule out the possibility that you'd go for a guy who you already know already has it all. You'll start thinking about these huge, continuous climaxes, and maybe decide you can get away with sneaking pleasure once or twice. If you do this, and I find out, what I'll do to both of you, you won't even want to think about it. I'm just going to remove the temptation, Shayna. I will remove temptation for you and take revenge on him for it. You might just want to suggest that he move out of state if he calls you again. I won't go out of state to get him neutered, but I'm damn sure I'll get to him if he stays here. 2 years have passed since Shayna's mess up, and some changes have occurred. Mercer actually decided to work as a carpenter in another state. No one called my house anymore, and he and Shayna never spoke on the cell phone. I know this because I carefully check my monthly cell phone bills and have never taken the recorder out of her car. I can't swear they never spoke, but I've been keeping a close eye on Shayna, and she hasn't called to arouse even the remotest suspicion. I punished her a little, and I don't think most would consider it nearly harsh enough, but it got to her heartstrings. We still go to dances, but I no longer say yes when a guy comes up and asks her to dance. She either dances with me or doesn't dance at all, and since I can only dance a third of the tunes that are played in regular nightclubs, Shayna sits a lot more than she dances, and it's killing her. She's complained about it once or twice, but as soon as I remind her of what happened the last time I said yes, she immediately shuts up. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, Don't even think about listening to the next one.